The Betrayal Chapter 5. I groan, waking to my alarm clock hours too early for my liking. I hadn't noticed how long I was out last night, studying, translating old text. Dad would have been able to teach me so much better. I sit there for a few more seconds before sighing and sitting up, turning off my alarm and looking around the room. The sun was blaring through the window. I stretch and laugh as my wing hits the wall. I was so tired I forgot to even change back into my human form. I won't deny it, it felt nice to be in this form all night. Although, as I look down at the pile of paper and books on the floor, I can't help but feel a pit in my stomach. These papers, with a very unbalanced circle drawn out in red pen around some notes. And finally, the rewritten copies of the best plan I could create. I sigh and stand up, my shaky legs notifying me about how just unprepared I was about today. I heard the clutter of dishes downstairs, a squeak of fear that made a shiver run up my spine, before I heard the crash of a dish against the tile ground. No! I heard Star yell downstairs. I took a soft breath in, grounding myself, trying not to let her scared voice get to me as I got up. I walked downstairs to see Star still standing there, running her hand through her hair as she looks at the shards of ceramic on the ground. She looked up at me, sadness coming to her eyes as she saw my wings. I look over my shoulder and then back at her. Oh, wait, no, you didn't do this. I didn't wake up from that. I rubbed the back of my head, sighing softly, and using this form to my advantage, flying over the shards to pick up Star and put her down on the other side of the kitchen. I forgot to change back last night. Now, are you okay? I stand by her, softly putting my hand on her shoulder as I make my wings disappear. I'm okay, just annoyed, she said softly, turning to get the broom. Still scared? I said softly, grabbing the broom from her so she didn't have to worry about getting cut from any of the pieces. She sighed, her voice shaky as she leaned against the counter. Very, she chuckled. But I assume with all the papers I had to step around this morning that you made a plan? I laughed softly. Well, it's better than nothing. I heard her shift behind me as I bent down to pick up the larger pieces. She hands me the dustpan from over my shoulder, bending down beside me. Something is definitely better than nothing. Her voice was soft. I could hear the traces of fear in every word. Ignoring the plate. Breakfast is done. It's just pancakes again. I smile at Star as I get rid of the last of the shards. You know I love those pancakes. Did you remember the mint? I say, standing up and putting the broom and dustpan away. She smiles at me and nods, grabbing a plate out of the shelf. It was then that I noticed how much she was shaking. It made me so angry to see how much Ava was affecting her. I look at the ground, making it my mission to protect her from Ava. She hands me the plate after dishing out the pancakes, and we sat there and ate in almost silence in the living room. The TV was playing some true crime show Star was listening to while she cooked. It made me uneasy as the clock ticked by before school started. Every step we took towards school today felt like impending doom. I stared at the concrete below my feet, taking notice of the dandelions growing through the cracks, trying to keep myself grounded, just like the dandelions. It made a soft smile come to my face thinking about it, until I looked over at Star as we turned the last corner towards school. Her face went from annoyance at who knows what, to pure fear. I felt my body go cold like a sharp breeze flowed through me. I didn't want to follow her stare. The way she stopped in her tracks told me everything I needed to know. Everything I wish wasn't true. I wanted to tear my eyes out, turn back, and go home as my head turned to see what she was staring at. I felt my magic bubbling at the surface as I saw Clinton and Carl talking to Ava. Clinton seemed hesitant. Carl seemed like his normal bubbly self. I felt myself go pale, my body shaking as my magic continued to bubble. I felt sick as I kept it contained. Come on, Emma. We have to get ready for class, Star said, shaking just as much as I was as she grabbed my arm softly, pulling me along into the school. We took our time putting our bags away. Star tried to calm me down as I sat there in front of my locker, shaking and going between being too hot and too cold. I held my hands in my locker, creating a flame in them just to try and release the protective magic. But after the third time it flared up, sparked in a bright magical flame bigger than what I wanted it to as my heart spiked. I decided it was best if I kept holding it back. We take a few more moments, calming each other down and grabbing our stuff for class before we go and sit down. Half the class still wasn't there, and it pained me to sit and wait, hoping Ava wasn't going to walk in the door. But it's a small school, and of course, everyone I know ends up having this class together. I feel my heart get caught in my throat as I see Ava walk through the door, followed by Clinton and Carl. I could only think of how they fell for her words. They were planning to kill me again. My heart pounded in my chest as I felt my hands get hot again. I couldn't stand being in the same room as her. I glanced at the empty hallway behind her as she continued to walk into the class. The closer she got, the more it made me shake. I stood up, unable to think of what my body was doing. I felt pain pushing its way to the surface of my back, my spine aching as my magic fought with my body, wanting to protect me since I won't do it myself. I ran. The only thing my body could agree on doing. I felt every step under my feet making my spine hurt more as blood pumped harder. The worst of it was the moment I had to pass Ava to get out the door. The way her voice rang in my ears as she chuckled. I saw her continue to walk over to her assigned seat, Clinton and Carl following her behind, but worriedly looking over at me. My head started to ache as my horns tried to form. The pain I was in as I held everything back was getting unbearable. And after one painful step later, I found myself on the ground. Star's voice rang in my ears as she asked if I was okay. I could hear my heart as it pounded in my ears, my body shaking as I finally lost my grip on my magic. My wings bursting out of my back just to fold around me. My horns were tight on my head, and the headache they caused pulsed through my skull. It made me dizzy. My tail curled tightly around my leg, the sharp point of one of the edges grounding me as it poked into my jeans. I felt Star put her sweater over me. "Come on, Emma," she said softly, rubbing my back and trying to pull me up. "Come on, we gotta get you to the office." I held my chest as I felt my heart continue to speed up, my vision blurring as tears dripped down my face. I groaned, trying to keep myself from passing out again like I did with our friends. But I was safe there. I'm not safe here. Help. I managed to choke out as my legs shook under me. I felt eyes on me and it hurt to move. The hallways were quiet. I knew there was no one there, but God, did it hurt. The eyes on me, they could all see just how uncontrollable I was. "Emma!" Star yelled, shaking me and standing in front of me when she got me to my feet. "Emma, listen to me!" Her eyes stared into mine. Stern worry filled her eyes. "Close your eyes and let me guide you, okay?" I nod weakly. "And breathe." I take a shaky breath in as I close my eyes, grounding myself with the things I can feel around me, my tail shaking as it poked into my leg, Star's hand on my back and her sweater around me, and then the soft carpet of the office. I felt Star put the hood over my head, and I heard Ira's soft footsteps come towards us. I forgot she was working in the office today. She helps out in classrooms in the office any chance she gets. She loves being helpful, especially with the off chance that this ends up happening for the 100th time. I groan as they sit me down on a seat in the back of the room. "Ava's here," Star said to Ira. Their voices were soft as they stood by the door. I sat down a good few meters away from them, curled in a ball on a sofa chair. Star's sweater around me still, hiding my horns and most of my wings. It helped, knowing people couldn't see the worst of me. "Damn it," Ira said softly, glancing over me. "That's not good." "Obviously," Star huffed. No, you don't understand." Ira got both of our attention. Just then her phone buzzed, and I looked over at her pale face as she reads the message. "I'd explain, but this might be better." She hands Star the phone, her face going as pale as Ira's. They both looked over at me. Ira hesitantly opened her mouth. "You made some plans, right?" she said quietly. I nodded weakly, my shaky body making it hard to move. I felt my hand move to my pocket, the fabric feeling sharp against my palms. I looked down at them. The redness in them almost glowed as I continued to hold back my fire. I sighed and grabbed the papers I had written over and over again, handing one to each of them. Ira and Star both looked at the papers with a, "Is this it?" kind of look. Listen, if this spell is gonna get rid of a demon, which it is, I mumble, weakly memorizing the runes in my head once again, then it shouldn't do anything else, I think. Ira's eyes widen, her mouth opening, wanting to object before she sighed. God, I hope you're right. She looked at Star worriedly. Star nodded, content with the weak plan I had written out. 'Cause she moved the plans to today once she found out you went here. Her words rang through my ears. I stare at the ground, my wings feeling heavy as the floor seemed to move away from me. I felt the fire in my palms burn, my eyes turned black before I stood up, my body swaying slightly before I started walking past them, handing Star her sweater back before walking out the door. Emma? Star said softly, grabbing her sweater. I'm going for a walk, I mumble. The door closes behind me, and I walk straight out the front doors. I walked around the block probably a half-dozen times before I could relax enough to turn back into my human form, and another dozen times before I could return to school. It was lunchtime by the time I got back. Star and Ira were waiting in the front yard of the school. I relaxed when I saw them sitting on a bench, eating their lunch and going over the plan. Emma! Star said as I caught her eye, walking towards them. Are you okay? She said softly, standing up to meet me halfway. Yeah, sorry. I rubbed the back of my neck before she hugs me. I'm proud of you! Finding different ways to deal with your anger is good, and you didn't set anything on fire! I smile softly, hugging her back. Right? I laugh and push her away. Come on, I haven't set anything on fire in so long. I promise I didn't. I controlled it enough. She smiled at me as we walked back over to Ira, who was going over the plan again. I mean, it's better than nothing, but are you sure that it's going to work? Ira said softly as I sat down. I chuckled. I can only pray. Star looked at me concerned. But if anything goes wrong, I'll be there to save you guys. I smile at them, determined. They nod and we sit down to enjoy the rest of our lunch in peace. It was easy to go the rest of the school day. Clinton and Carl and Ava were all in separate classes. Even when we saw Clinton and Carl in the halls, the way they kept to themselves seemed peaceful. Eerie, but peaceful. Although the moment that last bell rang was the moment all hell was going to break loose. The moment that deafening noise rang through the silent classrooms was the moment I realized just how deep I was in this mess. Ira stood up first, heading over to my desk. She stood there patiently as I groaned and got up slowly. Better to get this over and done with, I mumble. She nods nervously as we wait for Star, and then, as we walked off out of the school, we can only follow Ira as she led us to the place. Although, once we reached the block, we put our plan in action, Star letting her hair down and putting mine up as we switched sweaters. The darkness of the unlit building should be enough to hide our eyes as Ira walked ahead of us. I chased after her, acting out our parts like it was some sort of game. As we reached the building, even if it was our plan, the way Ira grabbed me, covering my mouth and pulling me inside, still scared the life out of me. My magic painfully forced down not to blow our cover. The way Star walked in behind us, calling out her own name to mask mine. She was held down by a few people and pinned against a wall. Ira covered my eyes, trying to help me not react. I thrashed around angrily, my magic flowing to the surface. The only thing calming me down was Ava's booming voice, which made the room go still. This demon we have here will return to her normal self. She will not be redeemed, but will no longer be a threat to our society. The group around us cheered as she stood in front of us. I peeked through the small gaps in Ira's hands to see Ava put her hand out in front of herself. Star standing there, acting like me, staring at Ava the same way I was. Fear filled my eyes, thankfully hidden by Ira as they turned black. A bright gold spell circle formed in front of Ava as she began chanting. Ira's voice stuttered as she and the rest of the group started to chant as well. I felt the black fade from my eyes as my mind went fuzzy. The magic in the room was painful to listen to. "No, let her go!" I yelled, choking on my words as I tried to mimic Star's voice. Star continued to stare at Ava, like a deer caught in headlights. I glanced around to see the many other people she was able to recruit. Clinton and Carl shoved into the back of the group, possibly 20 people. Their eyes were different in color, like a gray piece of plastic was over them. I almost tuned out the chanting as I tried to figure out just how many people were here. I glance back at Star as she stares at me. Her body shakes as she stands there. I couldn't break my gaze away as I looked at the horrific scene in front of me, as it just got worse. The runes in the spell circle that Ava formed in front of her glowed brightly, her eyes shining with that same golden light. Star stood there pinned against the wall by 2 masked people in cloaks, similar to what everyone but we were wearing. Black and white cloaks with a golden ribbon. Crosses hung on everyone's neck. It made me angry to see them abuse their religion without knowing just what we were, who we were. I said let her go! Ira flinched as I thrashed suddenly. Don't hurt her! She's done nothing wrong! Ava rolled her eyes as she continued. It's almost over, Ira said softly in my ear. I glared towards Ava, and as she finished the last words, her voice seemed to trail off as she caught my eyes, seeing the dark blue and purple eyes glowing in anger. Her voice was quiet, but still finished the spell before she realized it completely. As her eyes glow, her mind putting the strings together, I hear Star scream. The people holding her let her go, and she fell to her knees. Starine! I yelled, blowing the last bit of cover we had. No, no! Ava yelled, turning around and seeming to stand there dumbfounded. Get them! We've been fooled! She yells. I glance at Ira as she lets me go, her hands shaking as she reaches for me. I quickly turned into my demon form, the magic in the air no longer holding me back. My wings burst outwards, drawing off anyone who came running immediately. I picked up Star and hurriedly rushed out of the door, waiting for Ira before we bolted off. The group of people got stuck in the door as Ira pushed someone back. We could only hear Ava yell from inside the building, ordering people to catch us, track us down, to not stop until we were found. Some got orders to find her something or get her book. I gasped for breath, my panicked breathing making my lungs weak as my feet left the ground. It hurts, Emma, Star cried, holding me close, her fingers digging into my back. I tear up and take off the fastest I can. Ira followed quickly on the ground, barely able to keep up. Don't lead them back! Ira yelled from the ground. It hurt to have to wait to get Star home, but she was right. I take a detour home, flying in between houses and alleyways as Star cries in my arms. Her body shook violently. I glanced down at her, her body pale as it shook, her eyes shut tightly as her tears poured down her face. I couldn't feel the pain in my back as she grabbed the tightest she could onto me. It hurts so much, Emma. Everything hurts. My eyes turn black as I finish winding my way through the houses and land in our backyard, slamming my body against our screen door. It smacked against the wall and my wing before it landed on the ground behind me. The metal hinges were bent and lying in pieces around it. I didn't miss a beat as I ran to our room, my wings painfully rebounding off the walls as I ran up the stairs, taking them 3 at a time. I shoulder our door open. Thankfully, unlike our back door, it was already open. It bounced off my shoulder and the wall, thankfully missing me again as it swung back behind me. I placed Star gently on her bed and turned around to grab the spell books I left lying on the floor, glancing out the window beforehand. I stood there for a second before slipping on a piece of paper I left on the ground as I turned to the window, closed the blinds, and quickly dived to the floor, searching through the books and paper. I tried hard, searching through everything as Star whimpered quietly behind me. My hands burned the edges of anything I held. I felt tears dripping down my face as I threw some books to the side. I felt a shiver run up my spine as I heard footsteps from downstairs. Emma, please. I quickly turned and hushed Star, putting my hand on her shoulder softly, forcing my magic down so I wouldn't hurt her. She shakes beside me as I kept my eyes on the door. My wings guarded her body as my tail flickered angrily at my side. My other hand formed a fireball in it as my eyes narrow on our doorway. I felt my body shake as I heard footsteps coming up the stairs and down our hall, until finally they stopped just outside the door. My heart pounded in my ears as I stared down the doorway. Emma? I hear Ira's voice call out softly. I let out a shaky breath. My body shakes as I fall to my knees. My fire disappeared as I let myself fall. Is she okay? Ira said, walking into the room. I sighed as tears streamed down my face, my hand still on Star's shoulder as she shook. "It hurts so much," she said, her voice quiet against the loud room. Till it was silent. The painful silence between us all as Star's whimpering filled the room. I pulled my knees close to my chest, my wings wrapped around me as I stared angrily at the books on the ground. The room just seemed to go quieter by the minute as Ira came and sat down beside Star. Minutes passed. It felt like an hour as her whimpering quieted down. I flinched as Star sat up suddenly, her body pale as she looked between us. Her face was riddled with fear as she looked at her hands, making fists and watching them go red before letting go and watching the redness fade. I stared at her with matching fear as she looked into my eyes. "Star, what's wrong?" Ira said, looking between us. Star looked at Ira, the fear filling her expression as she continued to sit there examining herself. "It doesn't hurt anymore." I stared at her, questioning everything that those words could mean. She stares back at me, tears filling her eyes once again as she looks between us. Am I dead?" she cried. I stood up, hugging her tightly. No, you aren't. You're here. You're alive," I say, wiping some tears from her eyes. I stared into hers. The fear of her dying scared us all, but her eyes looked more lively than ever. I sigh as I see color return to Star's face. "You're okay," I say, almost reassuring myself. I'm okay?" Star chuckled, patting down her body, making sure she was alive. She groaned as she leaned against the wall. "God, that hurts so much." She smiled with a thankful look in her eyes. Everyone sighs as we sit there, relaxing slightly. I could feel the tension between us all as we sat there mentally recovering from everything today. "God, can't you guys ever catch a break?" Ira's soft laughter lightens the mood in the room. "Yeah, right," I mumbled, looking at the roof. "Mom's gonna make you replace the door," Star said softly. I groan as I rub my wing slightly. It hurts like hell since I didn't heal. And Ira looked at me surprised. "I was hoping it was like that before." I laugh at her words. "No, but I guess I gotta start saving up for more things I've damaged." I laugh louder, the stress of everything feeling like a chain that just broke. It felt nice to laugh, but God, did my body hurt.